Wait, can you hear me? Hopefully, I can be heard and
Can you hear
not
me, Chief?
just seen. Yes,
Hey, sorry,
yes, I can hear you.
mm, my reception should improve. I don't talk before.
Um, Hopefully it does. If um, as long as I can be
I'm
heard.
driving towards good service.
Okay. Well,
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and start on the topic. Turns out that this is a huge topic. How do you become a priest? How do you become a king? It's very, very first of all, in doing the research for this, basically it seems as if there's a ton of history missing. So I put out a thread. In the thread, I was discussing a chapter in the Bible. Judges 19 was really the whole story is Judges 19, 20, and 21. And if you read the story, it's the story of a Levite priest. And in this time, the time period they're discussing, there was no king of Israel. There was only these various priests. And priests are not judges, and priests should never be judges for any number of reasons that's outlined in the Bible in a lot of locations. But because they didn't have a king, when there was a problem, when something egregious happened, there was no leader to check them. So, in other stories in the Bible, you have individuals like Daniel who, when the kings got out, or not just Daniel, but a lot of them, they call them minor prophets, but these individuals were ones that when the king was getting out of line, they would go because the people always believe the prophets, which is why the phrase you're only a prophet is only welcome when they leave home. That was never the case for Israel always had prophets of their own people, so you could just imagine who came up with that phrase. So in other stories in the Bible, when the kings were getting out of control, uh, a prophet would rise from among the people and would basically tell them that they were getting out of control. This is seen in the story of Moses. So this in Judges, when this happens, this is far after the whole Moses thing. But if you think about what happened with Moses, he went to Pharaoh for 2 years, telling him, let my people go, let my people go. All these plagues, all this chaos for 2 whole years before Pharaoh finally let them go. But then after 3 days, again, another ritual where 3 days elapses. The here comes, you know, the Pharaoh saying, oh, no, I changed my mind. You people turn around and come back. And of course, he got swallowed up by the river. So in the story, this story in Judges, um, just to like bottom line it, well, I can't bottom line it. In the story in Judges, you have a priest, which one of the questions is, how do you become a priest? So in this case, you know that this individual is a priest because he is a Levite. The Levites were the one who were selected out of the 12 tribes to become the priest. And why was this? This is because in the Testament of Levi, it talks about how after he and his brothers basically murdered all of these people as a result of their sister Dinah trying to clean up the bloodline of humanity and going with these quote unquote pagans. She goes with them and is going to, like, again, clean up their bloodline. The brothers are mad because they don't want her to leave them. They need her as a their own priestess, as their own potential sacrifice. And so they end up killing the whole town, all the men, women, children, everybody. And then we never hear anything else about Dinah in the Bible at all. So Levi was the mastermind behind this, and their father, Jacob, was very upset with him after this. And so the Levites end up getting this particular blessing of being the priest because Levi repented. And it's this whole story about this in the Testament of the Patriarchs, because it gives the story of Levi and what happened after this and what happened before this. So he was able to repent, and in exchange for his repentance, he was allowed to be the priest. So in the days of Israel, the priest was selected by bloodline. So no, you weren't going to be from the tribe of Judah or Issachar or whatever and be a priest. It didn't work like that. The Levites were priests. And this is also because the Levites were not allowed to own things. Like, they weren't allowed to own stuff, because whenever, the whole concept is, if Levi got his hands on something that he could call his, i.e., his sister, he could potentially take somebody out as a result. And so, in order to avoid that potential of, removing people from the planet because he didn't like something that they were doing, listen, this guy, he's perfect to put in a job where he don't have to handle money, he don't have to handle no he don't have to really interact with people, because the priests, um especially in like numbers and stuff like that, they were basically like barbecue masters. Like, you would bring your offering, which was a burnt offering, to the priest, and they would prepare it for you to consume. That's literally, they were the line cooks. And so, to make sure the food was seasoned and prepared properly and nobody got sick. And so that's literally where this particular bloodline comes from. So that's how they became a priest. Again, there was no path for conversion in those days. And this is why when Jesus is born, he has to have come from the bloodline of a Levite in order to have the potential to claim that he could be a priest. Even though, as I mentioned in my thread, he never claims to be anything. He also comes from the bloodline of Judah. He never claims to be anything. He always asks the people, who do you say I am? And that's basically how that goes down. So in this story, this Levite um steals, captures, um uh uh kidnaps a woman and calls her a concubine. Now, this is not how this works. You don't kidnap women and call them concubines. So if you don't know, like, the previous history of what culture was like, you could read that line and be like, oh, okay, he got a concubine. No, that's not how it works. If you had a slave or a concubine was given to you by your wife, and your wife would, let you have a concubine because she was unable to give birth. This is not what this story says. This story says that he goes and takes a concubine. That means he physically stole a woman from wherever she was, whatever she was doing. He literally stole her without a wife to give consent for that. So you don't have a concubine if you don't have a wife. So this story is already on shaky ground just from the very beginning. And this concubine, he it says he was able to do this because she was a pagan. Now, what does being a pagan mean? Being a pagan could be, in most cases, as we've seen it used by the dumb diverses and the Catholic Church, a pagan is just somebody who doesn't worship the God you worship. Even if they worship the same way you worship, if they worship differently than you worship, you were just given the baseline of pagan. And in some cases, it was worshipers of Muhammad, but in this case, I think it just meant he didn't work. This lady did not worship the God that this Levite worshiped. So he kidnapped her, and she is now. There's another rule of that ancient world. If you escape, you go back to your father's house. That's it. Hands are wiped. The deal is done. There's no oh, I'm going to come back and gather my property from her father's house. You don't do that. Again, against the rules. But what is this guy? He's an incel. He's an incel. So he's like, he loves this woman and he also despises her. He has a timeline that he's on because he has a sacrifice to make. You know he has a sacrifice to make because by the end of the story, at least the end of chapter 19, he makes a sacrifice. So he goes back to the father's, he goes to the father's house and he says, I'm here for my property to this woman's father. Now, instead of chopping his head off, which is what he probably should have done, he shows him hospitality because this is an individual that obviously doesn't believe in over aggression. Is a peace loving individual. So he offers the Levite priest hospitality. And the guy stays one night. The guy stays 2 nights. And then by the third night, he's like, nah, I can't stay. I got to go because he knows he has to do this ritual at a certain time. So he takes the woman, the concubine, and he leaves. So he had another individual with him too, and they say to him, let's just stop here. It's getting dark. And he's like, no, 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 no. I don't want to stay here. I need to go to be in the land of an Israelite, which is like, why wouldn't you just, this is the place is closer. Why wouldn't you just stop here? No, no, no. He had a target in mind. This is how you know this was a planned event that he had to complete for his particular God. So they get into the land of the Benjaminites, the tribe of Benjamin, and they're standing in the town center because Israelites were known for their hospitality. So they knew if they saw a person who was from their tribe standing, meaning as the tribe of Israel, standing in the middle of the town square, somebody would say, "Come to my house. Let me help you. Let me take care of you," because that was the kind of hospitality that the Israelites showed. And sure enough, a gentleman comes from wherever, I think he was tending his animals or something like that. He sees him in the middle of the town square. He's like, no, 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 come on and stay in my house. I'm going to take care of you. So the Levite and his whole little crew, they go to this man's house. Okay. The man feeds the animals. They take their shoes off and they're whatever. Okay. And then all of a sudden, this is another flashback to another story in the Bible. All of a sudden, the wicked men who were out in the streets, who had seen him come to the center of the town square, literally have followed them back to this house. And now they're saying, we want him. So these are men who are literally saying, we want that man. Now, in any normal telling of a story, if a group of men come to a house looking for a man, do they not already know that it's gay? They're not going to come to the house demanding a straight man. No, no, no. They came to the house demanding a gay man because they knew the man was gay, which is why I said he didn't want that woman. It was nothing. It was not even about having her as a concubine. A concubine is not the right word. It's a sacrifice. He literally chose her to be the sacrifice. So what happens? The Benjaminite who had invited them into his home says, I'll give you my wife. I'll give you my virgin daughter. This is the same thing that Lot does, except in the story of Lot, there were angels there to defend the woman. In this case, there was no angels there to defend this woman. So she was left on her own. So the Levite says, here, take my concubine. Now, mind you, she escaped. He stole her, he kidnapped her. She escapes back to her father's house. Then, the very first opportunity he gets, he literally gives her up to these people. This story makes no sense unless it's a sacrifice. The story makes no sense. So, the woman they take the woman and they aggressively grape her. Okay, and so in the process of this, she is pretty much on her last leg. And so after they're done, the sun is starting to come up. She's literally crawling like to the threshold of the door because in her mind, if she gets through the threshold of the door, she will at least be protected somewhat. And so she gets to the threshold, and when she gets to the threshold, the Levite priest comes out, chops her into 12 pieces, and sends one piece to each of the tribes. Now, the tribes all receive this piece of this woman, and they call a council to figure out what is going on, why this has happened. The Levite does something that's unthinkable, like another unthinkable thing. So he murders this woman and cuts her up into pieces like a sociopath. He gets in front of all of these people, thousands of people that are here to hear his story on why this thing has happened, why this quote unquote evil has befallen him, and he lies. He says it's the tribe of Benjamin, the very man who took him in to protect him. It is his fault that this woman has died and this evil has befell them. And because they have no king, because there is no judge, because there is no Daniel, there is no prophet to question this man's story, which is totally insane. Just the whole premise of it is insane. Because there's no one here to question him, they end up doing what? They say, okay, let's go and kill them. Now, mind you, thousands and thousands of people have heard this story. Nobody's brain gets up. No Holy Spirit activates and says something doesn't seem right about this story. They're like, yeah, let's go kill them all. Our brothers, not just strangers, our brothers. So they gather up all their mighty men of war. The Benjaminites hear about this and they're like, wait a minute, something doesn't sound right. This story seems to be false. We need to go ask them some questions. Too late. Because the other brothers, 12 whole tribes of war ready men, are coming to fight them. So they're like, we're going to stand our ground. We're not going to make peace with them because we didn't do anything wrong. There's something wrong with this story. And nobody questions. There's no king. There's nobody. And so the brothers began to fight. And the first day, the Benjaminites overtake them because they have the upper hand. They're correct. They didn't do anything wrong. Their tribesmen didn't do anything wrong. This Levite is the one who has done the wrong. But because it was a ritual, a blood ritual that was performed on the second day, the rest of the tribes got the upper hand and they were able to basically kill all of the war ready men in the whole tribe of Benjamin. Thousands and thousands of men murdered in one go. Then they went and basically like murdered the women because they told the women, oh no, you can't marry any of the other tribesmen. So they pretty much go and murder the women. And there was a few of them they didn't kill. So on the third day, they were like, nah, we're gonna have mercy on them. We're not gonna kill the ones who are left. So, but then they're like, well, you killed all of our women, you killed all of our children. What are we gonna do? And you're not gonna let your wives marry our wives. I mean, marry us. So how is it supposed to work out? So they go to a whole nother city where the women are performing a ritual because this was probably a very high ritual time. I didn't do the math to figure out what time of the year it is, but I would guess it was probably around Easter because that's when you would do sacrifices related to death and rebirth. And these women are performing a ritual. This whoever is left in the tribe of Benjamin goes and grabs all of these women for their wives. And that's where the story ends. It just ends right there. I was like, okay, because usually the Bible has an answer. No, there's no answer. The only thing they give is a hint on what happens. And in the next book of the Bible is Ruth. And Ruth, again, is a story where you have a Moabite who was, kin to Lot, basically, that's going to carry the bloodline of Jesus. So the only solution was for a quote unquote Messiah to be born. That was the solution. That was the big master plan. Because these people were so wicked and nothing could be done with them on account of their wickedness. And so the whole story relates to another epic story, which is the story of Tiamat. Now, I mentioned Tiamat in the last talk, but now I can go into a little bit more detail. Tiamat is a goddess of the seawater. And so what happened was she's one of, it was like a few of them, like of these I don't know what kind of gods these are, but what I boiled it down to was they were the ones that emerged on the seventh day. So the creator created on the 6 days, and then on the seventh day, you have the emergence of these other gods, which would include Enki and Enlil and Ea and the rest of the whole Sumerian pantheon. They came through on the seventh day. This whole story must take place on the seventh day. And remember, a day is like 1,000 years. This is not a 1 day story. This is the creator had took his break for 1,000 years. It was a day for him, but it was 1,000 years on this earth planet. And so he took his break. Here comes these people. And now, since God, there is no God, they were the gods. They were the ones in charge. And so Tiamat had married the salt water. She was a salt water. She had married an entity that was the fresh water, and this created a problem for Enlil or Enki. And Enlil and Enki are twins, and so I just use them interchangeably because it really doesn't matter. But this became a problem for them because the creatures they were producing were very loud. Think the dolphin, the whale, these sea creatures that are just they make noise, and they didn't like that noise. And so because the goddess of chaos and confusion, they didn't like all that. So they go and they kill or dam up the fresh water. So now the fresh water can't flow into the salt water. It doesn't, there's no connection for it. And so what ends up happening is Tiamat doesn't do anything. She doesn't do anything. In the process, she has these other children. And it's I didn't really get into it in the thread because the thread was already long enough, but she has a bunch of kids. And so the children that she have convince her to go fight Enlil. Well, really it's Ea who is Enlil's father. They convince her to go fight him because he's the one that basically dammed up the fresh water from the salt water. And Ea is they're talking about like taking her out. So what she does, she gathers her children, and she forms armies with her children. They're all quote unquote monsters. And so this go and to fight Ea, will fight in Enlil or Ingi, depending on who's telling the story. In the form of this, they got so many different names. You can't even who about. For the point purpose here, we're going to use the term Marduk because that's what they use. So they send Marduk to fight Tiamat. Well, they fight Marduk, and what ends up happening is he cuts Tiamat's head off because she's a sea goddess. Cuts her head off, uses it to form the Milky Way. Cuts her body up, uses it to form the earth. But wait a minute. The earth was already created in 6 days. All the animals, all the plants, all the everything was already created. So what earth is they talking about that they created on the seventh day? This is what I would call the matrix. They literally took her body and created the earth that's on top of the earth. Or the outer earth. It could be another way of forming. They used her to create the outer earth. And so earth that the creator created is not the same earth that these individuals created on the seventh day. So they had this earth that was on top of the earth. They're trying to figure out how to create some slaves because now they don't have anybody to till the land. That's the whole problem. Who's going to till the land? So they take her top person, her general that controlled her army, which his name was Kingu, and they take him, brutally murder him, and they mix his blood with the soil in order to create man. Now, this had to take place at the same time that the creator took the dust of the earth and created Adam. So when the creator creates, there's no bloodshed. When these wicked Enlil, Enki, Marduk, all of these Sumerian gods create, there's always bloodshed. So why, if the Levite was a priest of the creator, why was he shedding blood for a ritual for Enlil, Enki, and Marduk? What's the reason for that? The only conclusion you can come to is that he was a traitor. He was lying. He lied. He was a Levite, but he was not a Levite. He was a priest of Marduk. And therefore, he had to perform this ritual. Now, what was the ritual? I talk about this in the thread too. The ritual was he literally recreated the death of Tiamat. Why? Why would he have done this? Why target the Benjaminites? Why do any of this stuff? Well, in my research, which no one else copies, no one else uses, Benjamin is the representation of Pisces. And in my research about Tiamat's kids, each of them were a representation of the zodiac, and Kingu was a representation, who was the leader of the rebellion, was a representation of Pisces. So the Levite, accused the tribe of Benjamin and got them wiped out of the earth. Why? Because Pisces signals the end, heralds the end of the zodiac. This cycle had to begin. And they would kill the end so that they could never complete the story. So you've got people wandering around trying to finish the story. The story can't be finished because the Pisces energy, which is the end of the story, isn't there. And you can't go from Pisces to Aries. It doesn't work like that. You're missing a big chunk of the story. And so that's what they did. They did this as a ritual to maintain their power forever. Because if there's no end, there can be no beginning. And you have people basically running back and forth from Aries to Aquarius, Aries to Aquarius, Aries to Aquarius, with no way to end the story, with no way to get off the wheel. And this has created this chaos where we need a king, because only the king is going to give you a decisive solution, a true answer, an end, a way to the way they describe it is a way to remove this idea that you are separate from the creator. Because if there's no end, you can't see a beginning. But that doesn't mean there's no beginning, but you can't process a beginning if you can't experience an ending. Like, you have to have the ending in order to have the beginning. And that's what they have made people so afraid of. They've made people terrified of ending stories, because if they end them, then the beginning is unknown. But it's not really unknown. You know how the story is going to start. It's written down. It's well documented in history what happens. But these people, this Enlil, Enki, Evil Jesus, Zeus, Sun Wukong, this wicked, imitation of Jehovah, imitation of the creator, imitation of the sun, they don't understand that there's endings and beginnings, because they were created on the seventh day. They came into being on the seventh day when the creator was at rest. So they never had anybody to show them how to actually accomplish these tasks. And so you have a whole slew of entities out here who have no idea how to end a story. So this ties into another story I was looking at in the Bible, which has to deal with Jesus casting the demons out of an entity and into the pigs, and then the pigs jump into the water. Now, like a week ago, I had started theorizing that you needed to eat pork when you did parasite cleanses, but I really I didn't know where that came from. I just knew I was doing this parasite cleanse, but I knew that there was another part to it. So I went back to that story and I was like, okay, well, why exactly would the parasites, the demons, request to go into the pigs? If they knew the pigs were going to jump into the water, why would they do this? And the only conclusion I can come to is that in order to remove the parasites from your body, they have to go into a new host. You cannot remove parasites from your body with nowhere to send them. It's simply not good enough to expel them from your body. You actually have to have somewhere to send them. So let's talk about a group of people who do lots of parasite cleanses, but they never get the demons out of their body. This would be especially the NOI Muslim practitioners, okay? These individuals always eat clean, do parasite cleanses and all of that. But what do they always say? No for me. I don't clean. It's this and that. So their bodies don't appear to have parasites but they still got the spiritual residue of the parasites and it coagulates in their sacral chakra, in their sexual organs. This is why you have all of these Muhammad followers doing this weird stuff with animals. You have a lot of these NOI people with multiple wives, and doing all of this again, depraved sexual behavior. So they say that they're clean, but the parasites don't. They have fully removed. It's a process to, remove these entities from your body. And so the only way to bring this all together is to actually, when you do a parasite cleanse, just like what Jesus did, he cast the demons out of the man and he sent them into the pig. Now, again, why would the parasites want to go into the pig? It doesn't matter. The pig is representative of Pisces in the Chinese zodiac. It is the end of the cycle. It means that they can have an end. It's and why, I don't know. I just came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter why they want to go in there. That's where they want to go. Let them go where they're going to go, as long as they decide to leave you alone. Why worry about why they want to do what they do? But if you don't take the whole process of removing these parasites from your body and making sure that they attach to something where whatever it is, as long as they leave you and they attach to something else, it doesn't even matter. And if you don't have a king who can lead you through this process of removing the entirety of the parasite from your body and attaching it to somewhere else, in literal terms, this would look like executing a contract. In spiritual terms, this would look like an exorcism, where you have closed the door for that entity and actually given it peace and either sent it down or sent it up wherever it needs to go, but you have actually completed the whole process. And so if you don't complete this whole process of removing and then clearing the scene, this is something they learn when they do technical training in police and army and all kinds of stuff. Situational awareness. You have to neutralize threat and you have to remove the threat. You don't go into a situation where they have some kind of a weird, shooting or whatever, neutralize the threat and then leave them there on the ground. You got to also remove the threat. Like, you got to do both. And that's something that a leader would understand. So how do you become a king? How do you become a priest? You literally, there is no this. And I mean, there probably is a rule book, and I think I just found it, but I'm not ready. I got to do some more research before I'm 100% sure on that. But from what the information we have right now, there is no rule book. There is no body telling anybody how to do any of this stuff. You have to just be it. You have to just command it. And you have to believe that the creator is going to show up with the elements and support you. And because it's a very risky thing to do, because you don't know if it's going to actually work. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, but it doesn't make you any less of a king or a priest if it doesn't work. Look at the Levite. He was a priest. His thing works. He got everybody to kill everybody. No problem. Nobody even doubted he was telling the truth. But other times in the Bible, when you have when the other entities came up, like, the king and Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar and Saul and all these different ones, when they came up, then there was someone there to bring them back down to reality. So you never know if there's going to be somebody or if there's not going to be somebody. You simply have to assume the role, act as if you have it, and act as if you know, and do what you think is right in your eyes. And that's something that says at the end of Judges. It says that everyone did what was right in their own eyes. At that point, At this point, where we are in this story, that's literally all we have. Do what you think is right in your own eyes. There's no there's nobody to tell you what is right and what is wrong. You have to literally call that from within your bloodline to know what is right and what is wrong. And the people who are wrong, they are the ones who end up getting punished for it. And it's dangerous, again, like I said, because you don't know what's going to happen exactly. But at this point, people just have to try their hand and see if they're good at it or if they're not good at it, because many are called, but few are chosen. So some people not going to make the cut, but some people are. And you'll never know if you're one of those ones until you take the actual leap.
Wow, beautiful. And I think I mean there's definitely a lot to digest, but I think
I
in
know it's a
terms
lot.
of it's I mean I feel like this is all set on purpose in terms of not knowing, like not having any kings or priests where we as individuals have to figure it out.
I think that's true, but usually, okay. So let me add the part where I'm starting to look at now. So when I was looking into this story of Marduk and Enlil and Enki and Tiamat and all of this, I was like, okay, so where exactly is this written down? Now we know the story is in the Enuma Elish, but there's like another set of history. And I found there's this guy, his name is Berosus. And according to him, according to his writings, there's 432,000 years between the first king of Babylon and the flood. 432,000 years of history, which he had documented in his scrolls, which were conveniently lost. And that has made me have to rethink all of our history, because they said, according to the Bible, from the flood until oh my goodness, woo Lord, from the flood, from the beginning of time until the flood was 14 generations. Well, 14 generations is not 400,000 years. So which one is it, 14 generations or is it 400,000 years? So now I have to go back and look at it. So there is a possibility that we do have records, but now we have to dig them out. It's going to be a process to figure out where that history is. Now I've got some leads based on, the biblical text, but that's a huge amount of time. And if it's true, that means that there's no way that it's been 2,000 years since Jesus died. Not possible. It maybe had been 500 years, because they obviously had to been counting time different. And so I've been saying that though, but I never imagined that I would be able to prove it, because I was like, man, this whole Jesus thing feel like it happened yesterday. Well, if it was 432,000 years from the first king of Babylon to the flood, then yeah, 500 years would be yesterday. They counted time different. Now we do know, I've mentioned this many times, they count the time different. They tell you when Monday is, when Tuesday is. They have decided how to divide the time, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. And I myself know that it's not correct because I observe when the time starts. And so there's no way that you can declare what day of the week it is when you didn't observe the actual sun and the moon and how they move and all of that. And so this means that there's a vast amount of research that has to be done to figure out how you go from 14 generations to 432,000 years. And I have no idea how to square that circle. There's no research on that. I doubt it. If I can even find the man's text, which is also highly doubtful, because they don't want people talking about it in terms like that. That means, as I mentioned before, that this history that we've all accepted is written by the elites. It's not the winners or the losers. It's the elites who wrote it to keep themselves in power for as long as possible.
Well, and now that you're aware of this, or at least more aware of it, it's gonna come to you. It's gonna manifest like the information, the way, the proper evidence is gonna show itself. Because, I mean, what you
Yeah, that's the problem.
what do you mean
That's never, you don't understand. I've been doing this for 3 years. This is exactly what I've been doing for 3 years. It's always a bad sign. When I find out information like this, that is so different from how anybody processes anything, this means that it's about to be crazy out here. Like it never ends up like, oh well, now Dominique, she's sitting back and drinking some brewskis and doing some reading. No, it's always like, okay, here comes a new level of entities I never knew about,
Mm.
trying to attack me for just trying to figure out the truth of something that I found it on a Wikipedia page. They just kind of threw it in there. Oh, 432,000 years between the first king of Babylon and the flood. What? Nobody never heard that before. No one, totally unaware. So yeah,
And
this
and
is.
it goes right past everybody because they're not meant to get it. They're not meant to like, they cannot
Right.
conceive and pick up things how you do. Now, like, I think
Yeah.
the difficulties, the challenges that you've undergone, they have made you to be the tough warrior that you are now. So it had to happen. Now, I think going
Right.
forward, it's good to be optimistic and positive about the fact that, hey, maybe you already learned those lessons. Maybe you already have built yourself up to be the warrior that is needed. And now, it doesn't have to be attacks. It doesn't have to be
I
like,
love how optimistic you are. I believe you though. You're right. I should be a little bit more optimistic. I've also 3 years of this and I'm like, oh my god. I just but I'm not gonna stop. It's not gonna do me from getting the
no, well,
answers.
because you can't
I
stop.
can't. I
You
can't
like,
stop.
even if
It's
you
impossible.
wanted to, yeah, you can't. There's no, so it's like you're in the roller coaster ride. You got to figure out how to, and not that you haven't been enjoying it, because I know you have, but it's like, oh, you're going up
No.
the mountain, and now you're about to start to fall, to the roller coaster is going to go down. Are you going to scream of happiness, or are you going to scream of terror?
Number
And
one, I don't like roller coasters, so this has not been fun. I am most scared of roller coasters with loop de loops, and I don't know if you've ever been to Kings Dominion in Virginia, but they had a ride called the Outer Limits, and the ride is in the complete pitch dark. And my cousins convinced me because we went there for a church trip. We're like, hey, let's get on this ride. I'm like, is it a roller coaster? Nah, it's not a roller. See, I didn't have cable, so I didn't see no commercials for it. I had no idea. They're like, no, 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 it's fine.
they
Just get
said
on there. I
no.
said, but is it dark in there? Yeah, it's pitch black. I'm like, but are there any loops? Like, what is this ride exactly? Nah, it's fine. You'll love it. I get on that ride. I screamed the whole time, and I was like, I will never, ever do anything y'all recommend ever again. Never. So no, I actually don't like this. This is not fun. But I also can't help myself. Like I want to know now, where is that history? Like, why has it been buried? And why is it that when I said, like I said, 3 years ago, I was like, I don't feel like the whole Jesus dying was that long ago. I said that. Well, if
Mm,
you're an ancient entity, if you've been here throughout that 432,000 years through maybe one incarnation. It doesn't mean you even had multiple. You could have been one incarnation and last that whole time, because in that
mm.
432,000 years there were 10 kings. That means each king reigned for at least about 42,000 years.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
42,000 years is a long, and people live longer. I had always said people live longer, but in the Bible they tell you, oh, the longest that people can live is 900 years, because Adam, he didn't make it to a full day with the Creator. And something I will say is, I just briefly looked into this, and it seems as if the 10 kings that reigned, at least the first king, was not necessarily a person like we would think, but like I've been talking about the Air Kadeshi, which are the elementals, and the Dare Kadeshi, it looks like it's one of these elementals that was the primary elemental of the time. And so if I look at it from that perspective, that the old this whole Old Testament time period was the elementals for the lunar cycle, and then when Jesus came, we started on the solar cycle. I've been able to line this up with my Zocan calendar, so I kind of can figure out where we're going, but still I have to go back and figure out where we came from. So it's still a very tedious task of trying to figure out what happened, and why the history has been lost. But it definitely does seem like um, this is a lunar this cycle has more to do with the incarnated as opposed to the unincarnated elementals, which would be like the trees, the sun. So the incarnated ones are like comets, aluminum, um fermentation, what's some of the other ones? um there's like 15 of them. So I had already started working with that list, and so the very first king they mentioned in the 10 kings, his name is alumin. So I'm like, that sounds like aluminum, and I go and look on my list, and that's one of the Dare Kadeshi's elements is aluminum. So I know that this history is out there, because there's no way I just randomly look on my list and aluminum is there and that was the name of the first king. That's sort of impossible by any stretch of the imagination. So now I have to go back and again try to put the whole story together. And maybe I'm hoping that will explain to us how to come into this kingdom and this priesthood, without the pain and suffering that our ancestors have gone through, just trying to figure out this time system, because obviously we're not talking about the same kind of time in the same way. But still, even if you cut it in half, 21,500 of anything is like a long amount of things. Like, that's not, I mean, even if you did weeks, why would they call them weeks in one place and year? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to be sorted out, which I haven't started to wrap my mind around. But I think that that's where the real answer of how they did this is hidden in that information.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah, this is, a lot of what you were saying in terms of, like, I think a lot of what you say, if people when people listen to it, like, it goes right past their ears, but
Yeah.
it makes so much sense. Like, it starts to almost, fill in the gaps within, at least for me, within my soul.
Right.
And it's
Exactly.
like, because as you're saying, it's like, it's being the timekeeper and also being able to understand time and the dates and like the order of things. It's almost like the soul, when it is when it is awoken to reality, it's like unconsciously it's already absorbing it. It's
Right.
absorbing the the truth, whether that be filled with distractions or not. Like, it once it can tell when it's true. It can tell when it's
Mm-hmm.
right. But obviously, if it has never been told anything that is possibly true, it has to just subsist with whatever kind of makes sense. So
Right.
as you are doing this work and continue to do this work and you're putting it out there in a situation like with us talking, those that hear, not only just hear, but as you emit it energetically, but those that hear absorb it, and then now they have something better to keep their time on. They have something better to track themselves. And I think this is, I mean, this is very powerful. It's very important because, as you said, like, if you don't have the time right, if you don't have like the dates right, it's you're just your head is just jumbled up. Um And definitely, I think what you said about the king and the priest, it makes a lot of sense in terms of that, like, it's almost like it's every man for themselves, and there is no specific blueprint, there is no specific guide in terms of how to be one, become one, um, and while this is very chaotic because it's like humans, most humans, it's like, we want a set thing. We want like but it's actually very reminiscent of the fact that we don't know the time, right? So it's like
Right,
the time is all over the place. There are no kings and priests, but as we start to move in that direction towards alignment, towards time, as well as towards embracing our inner king and our inner priest, whether that be together or separate. But I think actually it's together. Um,
right,
we come together in that alignment, and so it is chaotic. It's insanely chaotic, and most people are just not going to um, get it because really, in many ways, they're not supposed to get it. They're in different frequencies. They're doing other stuff. But for those that have been called to this task to be a priest, to be a king, as well as to understand the time, this makes complete sense. And what's happening now is like the energetic state of this reality is elevating rapidly. Those that are moving towards alignment are elevating in terms of like a prophet, as you said, where people hear, they listen. Now, whether we have a ton of followers or a ton of engagement or traction, or, like right now, there's nobody listening, but that doesn't matter
right.
because we
No,
are the prophets and they are going to listen. They're going to be forced to listen, whether they want to listen from us directly or in other ways. It doesn't matter because what we say goes. And that is what is happening as we become the king and the priest that we are. Is like you guys can go and stay in crazy chaos land. We're the ones bringing order. And so you want order? You're going to have to come to us. We don't have to go to you because we are order. We are the ones
no.
that are bringing alignment into this reality.
And one, like for an example, I mentioned this. Jesus never gave, is he the Christ? Is he it was the Levites as the priests and the scribes that said the thing over his head when he was being crucified that said, "Here lies Jesus, King of the Jews." It was them. He never said he was king of nothing. He said, "It's me, and when you see me, you see my Father." That was it. He never said he was the Christ. He never said he was. He never said nothing. He just opened his mouth and started talking. And so the example we have of this in nature, because again, when we can look into nature and see this, it's very helpful to see it within ourselves. The way that this shows up in nature is the difference between a fly and a bee. Now, I saw this on the website when I was looking into the specific scripture about the pigs. It's talking about demons. It's defining the word demons. And so, it's this example. It says when you look at a fly and you look at a bee, they have the same basic parts, and you look at how they move very, very similarly. But the difference between a fly and a bee is the structure, is the order. A bee lives in a very, very orderly society. A bee has a job. It comes out of the hive, it goes and pollinates the flowers and all the other stuff that it does. It goes back to the hive, it produces honey. And basically it stores up for itself quote unquote treasures in heaven. It performs work. And above all else, it protects the queen. What does the queen do? The queen is the one who births the new generation, births the babies. And so in the culture of a bee, you see that even though this is an entity that was created by the creator, obviously, and not created by the other guys, you see a very high functioning well organized like society. They even have a way of communicating with their wings and stuff like that. So if you haven't listened to like bee noises when you go to sleep, I think I like bee noises even better than lava. I think lava second. But anyway, after ocean waves, obviously, but download this and listen to the bee frequencies like as you go to sleep. It's a very relaxing sound to listen to. So let's look at the fly. In the case of the fly, what do flies do? Well, they're dirty and they have no king. They have no loyalty to any other fly. They don't work together. They don't do anything productive. They sit around in dirt. They make people sick. And the only thing that they do produce is more flies, which basically creates more chaos. And so this article was saying that when they talk about Bao being the Lord of the Flies, it's actually like an insult because how can you be the Lord of a kingdom that has no staying power? Because the flies, if when it said, you know, when people start dying and there's no resources, there's no flies either. If the humans can't provide resources for themselves, there's also no resources for the flies. They are completely reliant on the resources of the human, and that's the type of entities we're dealing with these parasites. So I call parasites internal flies because they're just flies. They don't have wings. They're on the inside of the body. But the flies on the outside of the body give us a good example of how they work. And so you can use that, you know, same theory and same philosophy to remove the internal flies so that the external flies don't have anything of value to gain from you.
Yeah, very interesting. Um, okay, yeah, I think it's funny because like if people were to listen to this very intently on understanding the step-by-step process of how to become a king and or a priest, they're going to be very frustrated because they're going to realize there
Yes.
is no plan. And if you need a plan, you can't be it. At least not currently, maybe in the future
Right.
once the proper kings and priests come about. But the thing is like
Right.
what this really shows is that like there in the heyday in the golden ages, like sure there was a way to become the priest, a way to become the
Right.
king. But in times where there's intense chaos, we don't have the like those types of people in many ways are weak. Like if one has
Right.
to be one if one has to follow a system to become a king or a priest, the likelihood that they are actually capable in the way that they deserve to be capable is probably actually zero. Now, they're going to be able to do their job and probably do it quite well, but not during times of chaos. During times of chaos, that is where the greatness comes about. That is where those that truly actually possess the power and the capabilities to be a king and to be a priest, that's when they come out. Those that cannot be planned out. That cannot be just structured like,
No.
oh, go to this school and you eventually become a king. That's not how it works. And so what we're seeing now is because and you see this all the time where let's say like the royal family, right? The English royal family, like these people
Right.
that are born into royalty, they're they're um they're ungrateful, they're spoiled, they're petulant, they're greedy, they're antisocial, like the things that they have lived in excess. That's
Mm-hmm.
not a king. That's not a queen. Like, yeah, sure, they might have that power and exert it and because they've been trained to do that. But that's what has created this chaos is that we've allowed this system of elites to continue to run the world. And well, look at where we're headed. Look at what has happened. So now, as you said, the prophets are coming up and saying, no, 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 this is not how it's done. No, we're going to clean this up because this is just not working out. And so obviously the fake kings and the fake priests are really upset. They're really upset, and you've experienced that. All these
Right.
people that try to slow you down, distract you, compromise you, attack you, blah, 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 whatever, they're trying to stop the prophets from doing what they were sent here by God to do, but you can't stop the prophets. You there's no comparison. There's no comparison between the fake kings and the fake priests and the real ones that made it out the mud. The real ones that were negated, ignored, attacked, you know, misguided, misdirected, whatever it might have been. Those are the real
Right.
ones. Those are the real prophets. And what's happening now is the fake ones are losing their power completely. Like they've become irrelevant. And in becoming irrelevant, well, there's a huge vacuum now.
Right.
Who's gonna take the office from the fake ones? Well, they never had it. They were just role playing.
Exactly.
They were just showing reality that they were not meant to be the ones to manage that position. And then the ones that truly probably got it stolen from or whatever it might have been, but the ones that truly deserve it are now rising up. And what you're going to see is there's going to be sure there's going to be resistance, but the resistance is actually just it's just a distraction. There truly actually is no resistance. And actually there has never been a resistance. It's just been
Right.
noise, like you said with the flies, just just annoyingness. That's all it's been. While like bees, we keep doing what we were supposed to do.
Exactly. I said in my post that it's a frequency, not a skin color. It's a religion, not a faith. It's an action, not a thought. Like it's a religion. Like it's this is my religion. This is what I believe. It's not a faith. Faith is personal on the inside of you. Religion is on the outside of you. So I was talking about public and private and secret. Here's a way of putting it. Religion is public. Faith is private, but your knowledge is secret. You can't once you have knowledge on the inside of you, that's the secret place. He who does the shadow of my shall abide in presence. Like you, it's a secret place, and that it talks in the Bible all the secret place that has been prepared. That is the knowledge. But your faith is on the inside. It's with every, blood cell, with every fiber in your body, you know that this is true. And on the outside, it comes off as this is what you actively participate in. It's the religion. And so they've done a good job of now demonizing religion so that you don't understand that this stuff is a religion, but it's not the way that religion is done now. But they've demonized religion so bad that when I suggest to people, hey, go into an Orthodox church, just see how different it is from a regular church. I promise you, it's not like those churches. The vibes are different. The whole thing is different. People can't see it because all they think is, oh, well, it's still Christian. It's like, yeah, but I guarantee you, I've been chastised by more Christians who claim to be Christians than I have ever in my life for being Orthodox. They look at me like I have 12 heads. They're like, why you have all these pictures? What's with all I said, that's my saint. These are my people. Like, what do you mean? You don't have pictures of your friends around the house? Like, of course I have pictures. Like, these people mean something to me. The modern Christian cannot understand having pictures of ancient people in their house. They can understand pictures of grandparents or members they've never met, but you got a picture of a icon. They look crazy. All these pastors and priests and all this stuff so bad, so people will turn away from religion, but people don't understand the religion is the structure. You need if you have structure on the outside, like a lot of spiritual people, they don't have any structure. And so I'm trying to figure out how you can have a spiritual practice with no structure, with no framework to put it in. And so instead of going and putting it inside of a framework, they say, I'll create my own framework. Well, history. Why would you go and create your own framework? There's plenty of frameworks out here. Just pick one that works for you. It's total. it's a lot of people out here who want to be the creator instead of serve the creator. The king and the priest both serve at the pleasure of the creator. They're God in other cases, in other phraseology. They don't serve at their own behest. I was reading, like I read in the that article about Babylon. The king had to every year perform a ritual in front of the temple saying that he dedicated his whole previous year to doing the will of the people, and he had to get the permission, the express right of the god that they were worshiping in that town in order to continue on another year. It wasn't every 4 years an election, it was every year. If he messed up during that year and somebody was gravely hurt or whatever the case may be, that's it. He's done. He don't get another chance. They probably behead him and move on to the next king. Like, I mean, that's what it says in the Bible. If you messed up, there was no second and third chances. You had to always do the will of the people. But do you see that now? No. Most of these elected politicians, even though they're pretending to be kings, they don't do the will of the people. And then that means they're not governing under the protection of the God that they say that they serve. They have adopted one of these bloodthirsty gods, these Babylonian, Sumerian, whatever gods from I call them the seventh day abominations. They serve at the pleasure of the seventh day abominations. This is why you have a Lindsey Graham calling for more war, more deaths, more murders, and jacking off in front of everybody about how many people are about to die. That's the God that they serve. You will know a tree by its fruit. The number one thing they have messed people up with is thinking that the fruit, the actions, the behavior that a person actually puts out there, that they actually do, not what the media tells you they do, but what they actually do is different from who they are on the inside. That is not possible when it's a religion and not a faith. The religion is on the outside. So on the outside, I put on my cross. When I go to church, I cover my hair. You know for a fact I'm either Orthodox or I'm Muslim, because of my skin color. So, but I'm practicing a religion. If these people come out here and they put on war garb like they're getting ready to go to battle, even though they've never been, like Da Nang Dick, who's never been to Vietnam but was acting like he was, these are not the people that you should be trusting. Because I always say it too, like when I talk about the paperwork stuff, because like again, with my tribe, the thing I focus on is correcting status. So I tell people, when you're listening to people who talk about paperwork, make sure their life is a life that you would want to live. So you have a lot of people out here teaching these paperwork processes, but you don't want to live their life. Like, you don't want to do what they do, because if you follow their paperwork, you will have to follow what they do, because they're representing a God. They're doing what they do on authority of some God. And so if you don't want to live like them, if you don't want to behave like them, if you don't want to have to sacrifice what they sacrifice to deal with the God that they deal with, to get the results that they had, then you might want to take a step back from that person, even if they have valuable information. Take the information that is valuable to you, but don't take their philosophy. Don't take the way that they behave. For me, that means I can't watch a lot of these people like I used to even to get knowledge, because I don't like their God. I don't like whatever energy they working with. I don't like, and I don't want to have to sacrifice like this night priest did in order to continue to have my paperwork processes work. And that's why when I do paperwork, when I present it, I I am a literal reflection of the one who created me, which in the Bible it says, freely I have given, so freely you should give. So most of my stuff you can get for free. I don't have a toll booth set up everywhere I go. Only the ones who are on the seventh day have a toll booth set up that requires blood in order for you to actually accomplish anything. I don't agree with that. And so that's going to be really important moving forward. The reason why Jesus was able to command crowds of 5,000 for now, mind you, this man is walking around the streets. 5,000 men are following him. That doesn't even include women and children. Everywhere he went, that was not by, oh, he called them and told them to come. No, That's when you get into the presence of a king, you can feel it. And you can't help but follow it. Even if you are a fly, you still could not help but follow after the energy of a king. That's why it's a frequency, it's an energetic. And so as we have these discussions and more people start to come to these conclusions and come out of the programming that has been fed to them, it will be obvious. That's the vibration. That's the frequency. I don't know what it is about that frequency, but that's the one that I want to be associated with. And this will become more acceptable, because right now it's unacceptable. Like for me, I don't have a lot of flashy stuff to show off or anything like that. So people will say, oh well, don't listen to her, she ain't got nothing to show for it. But if you hear me speak about what I do know, there's things that I know that no one can take from me. There's things that I can do for other people that I have documented evidence that I can do, that no one can take from me. And I do share those things, and I just do it very casually. But when you help get somebody $10,000 out of thin air and they didn't do anything for it, and I just wrote a few papers out, bing bang boom, send it in and it's done. You got people with complicated marital, tax, whatever problems, and I'm like, boom, 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 do this, do that. Now we're going to go to the next step. Like, these are things that other people, they would have they don't even know where to start with a problem. But people know if they come to me, if I don't know where to start, I know who to go to. I know what resource to tap in order to begin the process. And a lot of people, like I said, they don't understand how valuable that is, on a large scale, because they are propagandized to believe if I'm not riding around in the Maserati that I have not accomplished anything. But nobody can ride around, because they don't even understand that it's an option. They have no idea that life has so many more options that people don't understand how many actual options are available to them if they will come out of the propaganda. And so the only way to show that to them is to be it. It's not to think about it, it's just to literally ooze it. So you can always attract somebody. What they say, you attract more people. No, wait. What does she say? She says bees don't waste time explaining to flies why honey is better than shit. Like, I'm not going to explain it to you. You can't, if you can't obviously see that honey is better than shit, I don't know what to tell you. I'm gonna have to leave you right there until you evolve into someone who desires to have order in your life, instead of someone who believes that the chaos is going to get you to the next level. Because these entities, these 7-day abominations, literally create chaos, and they make you think that chaos is the way to accomplish things. When a parasite equity, when a private equity company comes in, they don't leave things the same. See how they can improve the company where it is. They change everything. They come in and they totally up in the whole process that the company already has running, because they believe that their process is better, because they believe that they are the Lord of the Flies, the king. I used to call him Bao Zebub, King of the Gnats, like Zebub the Gnat. That's what I used to call him, Zebub the Gnat. Like, they believe that they are the kings, and therefore, when they come in, they're going to set the kingdom up the way that they have. But that's not how it works. When you build a kingdom, you build it from the ground up. Like, I'm working on a property that I want to have built, and I was just thinking, well, why wouldn't I have Oregon instead of a driveway, or make my driveway like, because I saw a resin thing. I was like, oh, I could just make that Oregon. I could have sidewalks that are Oregon. Like, why wouldn't I do that? Because it busts clouds, and that way I won't have a bunch of these weird clouds and stuff. That's a forward thinking idea. But if I'm a private equity and I see these Oregon, sidewalk, I'm gonna be like, tear that shit up, put me down some concrete. Well, why would you do that? Like, don't you know what this? Nah, it doesn't matter. The concrete's better. You didn't even ask why it's there. You didn't even evaluate to see if there were things that could be salvaged. When the creator comes in, he comes in to deal with us where we are. If we have he says, a broken and contrite heart, like you just come in where you are and he will help us the rest of the way. These parasites, they don't do that. They come in and say, okay, you know, all that religion that you learned your whole life, your grandma took you to church and all that stuff, throw that out the window. Now you're a Hebrew Israelite, and this is, you know, no pork, no shrimp, no crabs, all that's dirty, and this is how you're gonna live. And you just throw it out the window. Like that's the why did my grandparents teach me Christianity for you to throw it out the window and tell me, oh no, you're not a Christian, you're a Hebrew. You're this is what you need to be doing instead. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's the chaos runs deep, but we're definitely like doing a great job of bringing order into this reality. And every single day, I feel the momentum increasing.
Yes.
It's increasing in a way where it's like all these people that really desperately try to ignore. Because the thing is, it's an ego thing. So
Mm-hmm.
when these people have put the prophets in a specific hole in their reality of what this prophet is, and then they start to realize, oh shit, this is actually the prophet. That's really
Right.
triggering because they're realizing, well, then what the fuck am I? What's like if they're the prophet, what am I? And obviously,
The
like
frequency doesn't match.
they've been told, yeah, they've been told since birth that they're a special snowflake and that, you know, everything that they're doing to serve the chaotic system is great. And now the prophet is telling them, hey, no, like that's not the way. It's very difficult for them to turn around and start walking back slowly to you because they're not going to run.
Right.
They have to walk slowly back to you, and and that's very difficult for them to do. But it's getting so bad out here energetically that they know that you are the way. They know that you are the light, and they know that instead of serving, as you said, these the parasite equity and these wicked beings that are just completely distorted and misaligned, they know that that's not the way anymore because they just keep
Right.
trying to serve it and it's not working out. And they feel your energy, they feel your power, they feel your gravitas, and they're like, I need to serve that energy. That's what I have to
Right.
serve. And that's what's been happening. Obviously, you know, for us, we've had to claw our way through this.
Right.
There's nobody's like, hey, let's help you out. Hey, let's work with you. Hey, let's
No.
support you. Hey, let's, you know, let's shower you with all this abundance and all this wealth and everything. No, they haven't done that. But the
Nope.
tide is turning. The momentum is picking up on our side as everything else starts to collapse. So what's going to happen and what we're being prepared for is that insane amount and this avalanche
Yeah.
of support, of abundance, of and even if it's not, at least temporarily, even if it's not as Jesus having thousands of people following, it's about um what you enact in this reality is provided for. And all these people that they weren't serving you, they've been serving you the whole time. They just weren't aware of it.
Right.
They weren't conscious of it. So everything that they've done in terms of quote unquote negating the prophets, it actually has prepared them to serve the prophets better. That's the beautiful thing about
Absolutely.
what's going on. And so
And we do have an example because Abraham, when he went into the different places, and the kings all wanted his wife, and so the king would take his wife because he would tell the king, oh, that's my sister, which was like weird. He was like, oh no, that's my sister. So the king would take his wife to make her their wives, and every single time an angel would come and terrorize them all night, and he would come to Abraham in the morning, and he would say, the king would say, Abraham, is this your wife or is this your sister? Because an angel, he was on my ass all night. And Abraham said, well, yeah, that's actually my wife. And he would be like, oh, get this man everything I got in that kingdom. They would send Abraham out with when I say everything, that all the gold, all the silver, all the jewels, animals, whatever they could find to give to Abraham to appease the God of Abraham, so that that God would not terrorize him anymore. They sent everything. Abraham did this 4 times.
Wow.
4 times. He said, "No, no, no, that's not my sister. That's my wife. That's my sister." And I kept saying, "Why would he do that?" But I see what you're saying. It was a preparation. It was a test for the
Mm-hmm.
king to see if he what frequency he was on. The creator wanted to know, can he is he a true
Right,
king? Because
right.
if he
Uh-huh.
wasn't, and he had taken Sarah for his wife and had sex with her, the king, guess, because remember I said they had to be checked every single year. The God would have been like, nope, he failed, take him out, and he would have failed the test. So some of this stuff, my friend always tells me this, is actually tests for the other people. But I keep saying to the creator, stop using me to test other people. I gotta get my life together. I don't want to keep being everybody's test. So, I mean, enough testing. If people haven't figured it out by now, you got to find somebody else to test them. Because me personally, I've had enough, because this stuff, these people are crazy.
Well, but also, understand that the level of test, the difficulty of the test determines the place that you receive. As they say, like, what is it?
That's
God
true.
tests his warriors. God gives his toughest battles to his toughest warriors. So,
That's true.
we are, and we're almost at the finish line. Now, there is no finish line. It's a journey. It's not a destination. But in terms of what I think you're speaking about, is we're almost there. And
We're at the end of this cycle, and we're going to start a new cycle. So I definitely agree with that. But it's how it is when you get to the end of me, I do a lot of driving. Like when you're almost home, but you're not quite there,
yes,
that
right.
last
Uh-huh.
hour,
That's
you're like, oh my
feels like
gosh,
forever.
I still got an hour left. Like you have to really push through it to
Uh-huh.
get, I mean, especially when you got like a trip that's supposed to take 10 hours, but it took 20 hours, and you're like, car full of kids like I
Yeah.
usually am, like, oh my gosh, just get me to this location. And you have to really, really, really push through it. But the good thing is you can stop and take breaks and rest as much as you need, but you just don't want to rest too long, because you do lose your momentum when you rest too long. But we do have to like take a break. I just feel like in my own case, I would like a break. Like, can I get a reprise where it's not quite so intense for the amount of time. I mean, there's this research about this 400,000 years is already going to be intense. Like I feel like I can't start on that research until I get a rest from this last set of, because pulling this information out about the priests and the kings and the Zulkin cycle and all this stuff, it is very, it's very draining. It's very like it's very thought heavy. Like you have to do a lot of thinking, and then the thinking is only so that you can be a better intuitive, like you can intuit what you're looking at better, because you can't really think about the solutions, you really just have to feel them. And so that's a whole energetic process that probably people don't know, or maybe have never heard of. It's a whole energetic process. So be like, okay, if I have to do this work, which is what I always say, if I have to do this work, I don't care. The work is fine. But my problem is I need to rest. I need to be comfortable. Because one thing I will say is that the prophets were comfortable, especially once they got into the palace of the king. They literally were like David, like Daniel, like Abraham, like when they got into certain location, or like Joseph. Joseph is the best example. He was, yes, he spent 5 or 10 years in slavery. Then he was in Potiphar's house, and he went to sleep with Potiphar's wife, and she got him thrown in jail. So he had a lot of downtime, but there were like moments of like, I guess the way that they enslaved people, you, even the slaves in the old days had rest. Right now nobody gets a chance to just take a deep breath and like breathe and just give their nervous system a time to reset. Like this society is so full of parasites that there is no reprise from it, because it's the age of fermentation. So everything is just fermenting and fermenting and fermenting. But at some point, you have to take the old wine out, and you can't put new wine in old skeins. You have to put the wine into a new skein. Like there's things that are supposed to be done, and they're just breaking so many of the customary rules that it's really, really difficult to to just reset, to just say, okay, hard reset. Let me just gather my brain cells from all of this, extra work I'm exerting on myself, so that I can have enough energy to climb to the next, because every mountaintop is a valley. So unless you get to you have a mountaintop, then you have a valley, then you have another top. And even if you're at the top of one mountain, you still got to climb up to go to the top of the next mountain. And there's a process for that. Like, and other, especially in the Hindu pantheon, they talk about this process in a way that's a little bit more um dynamic. But in this Judeo-Christian world, they totally leave out that process of, before Jesus went and started his ministry, first of all, for 30 years, he was running around who knows where, doing who knows what. And before he started his ministry, he had 40 days where he was just by himself before he even picked a disciple, before anybody even know who he was. And I don't feel like we got that process. There was no, okay, I know that I have a job. I know what it is that I have to go out here and do. Like Jesus was told, he knew what he had to go do. There was no point where we could prepare ourselves. And that's, you have to have a point of preparation. And if you're, no matter what, there has to be a point of preparation. And I feel like that's what we need. We need a point of preparation where, okay, if I know I'm going to be the priestess and the queen, okay, I'm cool with that, no problem. But before I start that job, I need to prepare myself. And it's not just a physical preparation of, building my house or whatever the case may, but it's also an emotional preparation of, it's like on the old TV shows of when they became celebrities. It's like, once you walk through this door, you'll never have a private life again. Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, I had no idea that once I started on this path, I would never be a private person ever again. It would be impossible. Not that I was a private person before, but I had no idea that that part of me was going to forever be taken away. And that's part of the process of establishing who's going to be the priest, who's going to be the king, is understanding that before you go into that, you have to be prepared. And it can't be this haphazard preparation that we've been thrown into. This is totally chaotic. We need a standard, like, this is why I have been telling people, you need to reset your nervous system, right? That's how we ended up with the parasite cleanse. You need to reset your nervous system, because the parasites mess with your nervous system. But the but you have to have a price. Like, how much is it going to cost for you to reset your nervous system? Like, you need stuff, you need this, and you need that. So I told everybody, it's not a price so you can be bought. It's a price so that you know when you receive it that that's what it's for. Like, you can get money for different stuff, but you need to know why you got certain money so that you can use it. So everybody needs to know how much it's going to cost them to reset their nervous system. Like, what is it going to specifically take? And when that threshold is met, that's when you should start on this process of, that's when like, you've been told, okay, this is when I'm going to start this process of this kind of ritual purification, because that's what the 40 days in the wilderness was. It was a ritual purification so that you can be prepared to step into the role that you're supposed to step in. And so if we're supposed to end up into this quote unquote savior energy, this priest and king that, like Jesus was, he had warning. He was aware. Like, he wasn't unaware of what was going to happen. He knew that starting the process, it was in all likelihood that he would end dead, and I said that in my thread. Like, when you start this process, there's a high likelihood that you're not going to make it. Like, you have to understand that, but at the same time, you're going to be comfortable while you're here. But now we know that some of these kings ruled for 40,000 years. Well, that makes it a lot. Yeah, I could die after 40,000 years. I'm okay with that. Am I okay with dying after 3 years? No, I'm not okay with that. So it's like, it changes the whole perspective when you have more of the history, but it does not change the fact that before you enter into that role, that you have a time to prepare yourself. And I feel like if we are writing the rules right now, if we're establishing how this goes, this has to be a non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable that before you throw somebody into the role of priest or king, that they have a time to prepare themselves, that they don't have to do it from a place of lack, because that is chaotic to go from zero to hero, like it what's that movie everyone's talking about right now, The Emperor's New Groove, like whatever, the cartoon movie. Like, there has to be, that's not how it works. Like, you, or Hercules, like, no, you don't go from being a nobody to being top of a banana. That's not a good idea. It needs to be a process so that your nervous system can build up the endurance to last as long as you need to last. So that's one of the, like, my non-negotiables of, hey, if you want me to do this, fine, I'll do it, but I have to have a time to prepare myself before I go onto this path, because I know that once I start the path, I can't turn back. I won't be willing to turn back. And that's what I feel is missing from this time period. Like, before I got into this, especially this information over on, like, the very highly spiritual technical side, I should have been given the opportunity to prepare myself, to prepare my nervous system, to prepare my family, not jump into this and now I'm making videos, talking to people, doing charts, entities are chasing me, attacking my kids. None of that stuff is reasonable if you are setting up a system that's going to endure. This is all stuff that's going to fall apart as soon as I'm passed on. There's not going to be anyone who takes wants to take over this role. Why would they? Because there's no benefit. And so what I always suggest, like, especially when we talk about stuff like this, is we have to set the baseline bare minimum of what is required. Like, we can't just say, okay, we're just going to go with the flow. Like, that's fine, but that does not make sure that people have a bare minimum of what is required. I want this to be, when I do this kind of stuff, I want it to be replicatable, because everybody has to become their own king and their own priest of their own kingdom. And your kingdom is within, is your body. So this is not something that is like isolated. This is a part of a larger, a wider scale awakening that has to happen for people. But if you awaken and the first thing you do is be attacked without having any preparation for the fact that, hey, they're going to come and offer you this stuff, but yeah, just say no because you don't really want it. Because, like, when Jesus said, my kingdom is greater and blah blah blah, thousand hills and all that, like, there's a greater kingdom that awaits you if you can endure unto the end. But how about if you didn't get a warning at the beginning that it was going to be a process of endurance? How can you possibly make it to the end? I want this to be, I don't want it, I always say, no unnecessary loss of life and no unnecessary pain and suffering. You go through enough just being a human, coming to the realization that the entire system has been lying for your entire life. That's very difficult to accept. But then on top of that, you still have to live like and be a regular person. It's too much.
Yeah, yep. And we chose we chose to you know,
I was going on this rant about this topic.
I feel for you for
This
sure
is my
because
most ranted topic,
because it is
but
it's
I cannot hear you if you're talking.
hello.
And I still cannot hear you. Are we saying bye? Or are we saying hold on? Okay, hold on.
Can you, so you can't hear me?
Oh, your sound is not working. Okay, well, we'll wrap this up because it has been long enough anyway, and we'll continue along with this discussion next time. So, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll definitely see you on the
Yes.
flip side.
Thank you, everyone.